Hi there, in this video we're going to learn about percent and estimation. Your objective for today is you'll learn how to estimate percent of numbers. So Jody has paid 62% of the $500 she owes for her loan. Estimate 62% of 500. So again, it says estimate here, so that means you need to guess. But not, a random guess. You want to come so that you just want to make sure that it's close to 62%. So let's figure out a number that's first close to 62 to work with. In this case, 60 would be a good number to work with, right? Because 60 is close to 62. So I'm going to, instead of finding 62% of 500, I'm going to find 60% of 500. So 60% is like saying 60 over 100 or 3/5. 60 over 100 actually reduces to 6/10, which reduces to 3/5. So I'm going to think of the 60% as 3/5. So now I'm going to find 3/5 of 500, right? If I'm trying to find 60% of 500, it's like saying 3/5 of 500. So I'm going to multiply 3/5 times 500 over 1. And from here, I'm going to do my cross canceling. 5 goes into 5 once, 5 goes into 500 100 times, and I'm left with 300. So my answer here, 60% of 500 would be about 300. So Jody paid about $300. Marita and 4 of her friends ordered a pizza that cost $14.72. She is responsible for 20% of the bill, which is normally the tip in the real world. So about how much money will she need to pay? In this case, a way that you can figure out 20% of the bill, well, 20% of $15 is kind of hard. I'm going to make this $15. 20% of $15 is kind of hard to think about. So instead, I'm going to find 10% of $15. So if I find 10% of $15, I could do 0.1 times 15, or just like I showed you in the last example with the fractions, you could do the fractions too. That would just be 10 over 100, which is just 1/10. So 1 over 10 times 15. So 0.1 times 15, in this case, you just move the decimal over once to the left, and you get $1.50. So here, 10% of $15 is $1.15. So if you know what 10% is, what's 20%? Well, you can just multiply this by 2, right? Can't you just double it? 20% of $15 is 2 times 10% of 15, right? So if we already know this first one, we can just double that. So 2 times $1.50 is equal to $3. So Marita should pay about $3. All right, let's look at the next example here. We have estimate 122% of 50. So 122%, I'm going to say, is about, 120. And so now I'm going to just try to find 120% of 50. Well, 100% of 50 would be 50, right? And 20% of 50, well, let's try to figure that out. 100% of 50 equals 50, right? And 20% of 50 is like saying 2/5 times 50. Or sorry, 1/5, I should say. Sorry, 1/5 times 50. Again, how did I get that 1/5? You just do 20 over 100, right? 20 hundredths, which actually simplifies to 1/5. It would just be 2 over 10 and then 1 over 5. So you have 1 times 50 plus your 1/5 times 50. So again, this 100% of 50 would get me 50, right? And 20% of 50, or 1/5 of 50, gets me 10. So together, 50 plus 10 gets me 60. So 122% of 50 is about 60. So all we did here, we just broke this down from 122 to 120, and then broke it down even further to 100% and 20%. There are 789 7th grade students at Washington Middle School. About 1/4% of the 7th grade students have traveled overseas. What is the approximate number of 7th grade students that have traveled overseas? Explain. So first I'm going to start off with this 1/4. 1/4% is 1/4 of 1%. So, and then I'm also going to look at the 789. 789 is also about 800. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to try to figure out what 1% of 800 is. Okay, so if I figure out what 1% of 800 is, I can just move the decimal point over 2 places to the left, or you can use the fractions if you like to use the fractions, it's fine. 1% of 800 would just be 8, right? You just move the decimal place over 2 spaces to the left, you get 8. And then we want to figure out what 1/4 of 8 is. So 1/4 of 8, you just do 1/4 times 8 to get 2. And then from there, you have 1/4 of 8 is 1/4 times 8, or 2. So about 2 7th grade students have traveled overseas. If you're not sure, you just want to figure out what 1/4 of 8 is. Think about like 25% of 8. That's 1/4, right? 1/4 times 8 gets you 2. So about 2 7th grade students have traveled overseas. Here's our next example. We have last year, 639 students attended a summer camp. Of those who attended this year, 0.5% also attended summer camp last year. About how many students attended the summer camp 2 years in a row? So I'm going to start off with my first example, or I'm going to start off with this 0.5%, which is also technically half of 1%. Then I'm going to look at 1% of 639. Well, I'm going to just move the decimal place over 2 spaces to the left. Move the decimal place over 2 spaces to the left. So 0.01 times 639, if you move it 2 spaces over to the left, just gets you about 6. So half, or 0.5% of 639 is about half of 2, or 3, if you want to think of it like that. It's about half of 6, or 3, I should have said. Okay, so about 3 students attended summer camp 2 years in a row. So some concluding thoughts. Use numbers that are a bit more friendly. In the real world, you don't always want to pull out a calculator to find percents. For example, if you need to find 9%, just find 10% of it. It makes your life easier. Just move the decimal point over 2 places to the left. Use smaller numbers to break it down. For example, if it's hard to find 20% of a number, but easier to find 10% of that number, find the 10% and then just double it. All right, I hope you learned the different ways to estimate with percents. You don't always have to follow along the exact examples that I did here, but it will help you in the real world if you did. All right, thank you for watching.